The Southington haunting, the funeral home that trapped a family seeking help for their sick son, moved into a former funeral home and found something waiting for them in the basement. Late summer of 1986 finds Carmen and Al Snedeker standing in front of a large rental property at 208 Meriden Avenue in Southington, Connecticut, evaluating what appears to be an answer to their family's immediate and urgent need. Their eldest son, Philip, fights Hodgkin's disease, and the treatments require regular visits to a hospital nearby. The house before them offers space, proximity to medical care, and a rental price that fits within their strained budget. The decision comes quickly. The family moves in without extended deliberation, carrying their belongings across the threshold into rooms that seem ordinary in every visible respect. The discovery comes within days. Carmen descends into the basement on a routine errand and finds equipment that does not belong in any residential property. Embalming tools rest against the wall. Drainage systems built for purposes no family home requires run beneath the concrete floor. The realization arrives with cold clarity. This house served as a funeral home before it became their residence. The undertaker's instruments remain because no one thought to remove them before the property transitioned to rental status. The basement where bodies were prepared for burial now sits directly beneath the bedrooms where her children sleep. Carmen feels something wrong about the house from that moment forward, though she struggles to articulate the quality of wrongness in any terms that sound rational. The air in certain rooms feels heavier than physics should allow. The basement, despite thorough cleaning, retains an atmosphere that makes her skin contract whenever she descends the stairs. She tells herself these reactions stem from knowing the building's history, that imagination fills in details her senses cannot actually detect. Philip, however, begins changing in ways that alarm her beyond any explanation she can construct from stress or medical side effects. The boy who left their previous home bears little resemblance to the young man who emerges from his basement bedroom in the weeks following the move. Philip's personality shifts in ways both subtle and profound. He speaks with language that sounds foreign to his established character. His eyes sometimes appear to focus on things no one else can see. Episodes of apparent dissociation leave him confused about hours that have passed without his conscious participation. Carmen initially attributes these changes to the psychological burden of fighting a disease that threatens his life before adulthood. But the behavioral alterations intensify beyond what any medical professional suggests represents normal response to illness and treatment. The phenomena spread beyond Philip as autumn progresses into winter. Objects move between rooms overnight without any family member claiming responsibility. Carmen finds items from the kitchen relocated to bedrooms. Clothing appears in areas of the house no one admits entering. The basement floods repeatedly despite multiple inspections by plumbers who find no structural cause for water accumulation. The smell of decay permeates rooms that have been cleaned with industrial thoroughness, a scent that arrives and departs without corresponding to any identifiable source. Other family members begin reporting visual phenomena that share disturbing consistency across independent accounts. Dark forms move through hallways in peripheral vision, vanishing when observers turn to face them directly. The basement, already uncomfortable because of its history, becomes a space the family avoids whenever possible. Multiple household members describe seeing figures in that lower level that appear to relate somehow to the mortuary work conducted there for years before the Snedekers arrived. The apparitions do not behave like residual impressions replaying past events. They seem aware of the living people observing them. They seem to watch back. Dreams plague the family with images so vivid and disturbing that members begin comparing their nocturnal experiences at breakfast, discovering to their alarm that separate sleepers report shared imagery. The dreams carry qualities of intrusion rather than natural psychological processing. They feel, to the dreamers, like something external inserting itself into their sleeping minds. Philip's deterioration accelerates. The impulses he expresses become so foreign to everything his family knows about him that Carmen realizes she no longer feels certain her son occupies his own body during certain episodes. The family's Catholic priest visits the house at Carmen's request, conducting prayers and blessings intended to restore spiritual peace to the residents. The priest completes his work and departs. The phenomena continue unchanged. Carmen understands then that whatever occupies her home operates beyond the scope of standard religious intervention. She needs investigators who specialize in confronting the kind of presence that has established itself beneath her roof. She needs Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed and Lorraine Warren arrive at 208 Meriden Avenue in 1986, brought by Carmen's plea for help after conventional religious assistance proved insufficient. Lorraine steps across the threshold and stops. Her face drains of color. She stands motionless in the entryway, breathing carefully, her hands trembling slightly as she steadies herself against the doorframe. Ed watches his wife with the practiced attention of decades working together. He knows she encounters something immediately, something powerful enough to strike her before she advances beyond the front hall. Lorraine describes later what hit her upon entering: a concentrated presence of malevolent intelligence, so powerful it ranks among the most intense she has encountered in her entire investigative career. The quality of evil she senses saturates the house like moisture-soaking wood. It does not hide. It does not retreat from her psychic sensitivity. It seems, if anything, to acknowledge her presence and return her attention with something that feels almost like recognition. When she must descend to the basement where the mortuary work was conducted, the sensation intensifies to a degree that requires her to pause, compose herself, and pray for protection before continuing the initial walkthrough. Ed Warren conducts his assessment with methodical precision, documenting every physical anomaly and interviewing each family member in separate sessions to build a timeline of the phenomena free from the contamination of shared narrative. He photographs the basement. He examines the embalming equipment still stored there. He questions Carmen about Philip's behavioral changes with clinical thoroughness, distinguishing between symptoms that might relate to his medical condition and alterations that suggest external influence. By the end of that first visit, Ed reaches his conclusion. The Southington house suffers from genuine demonic infestation of the most serious classification he employs. Ed's assessment rests on multiple converging factors that together paint a portrait of extraordinary danger. The property's long history as a funeral home created conditions unusually favorable for malevolent forces seeking anchor points in the physical world. Years of contact with the deceased, of preparing bodies for burial, of embalming and storage of human remains, generated what Lorraine describes as accumulated residue that exists at the boundary between life and passing. A demonic entity has exploited this environment, using the funeral home's history as a foundation for establishing sustained presence. The entity demonstrates qualities that distinguish it from residual hauntings or simple spiritual disturbance. It shows intelligence. It targets family members individually, exploiting personal vulnerabilities with precision that suggests deliberate strategy. Philip, weakened by illness and its treatment, presents the most accessible target. The entity works to establish progressive influence over the boy, attempting what Ed classifies as partial oppression, a state in which demonic force begins compromising an individual's spiritual integrity and autonomy. Carmen reports that the presence seems to know each family member's specific weaknesses, creating friction between relatives, generating distrust where love previously existed, building an atmosphere of hopelessness that becomes harder to resist as weeks pass. The danger extends beyond psychological distress into theological territory Ed Warren does not discuss lightly. Demonic infestation of this severity represents active spiritual warfare. The entity does not merely frighten. It works systematically to compromise, corrupt, and ultimately claim the souls under that roof. Ed coordinates with Catholic clergy to arrange formal exorcism, the Church's most serious and carefully regulated spiritual intervention. The exorcism process extends across multiple sessions, reflecting both the severity of the infestation and the resistance encountered during each attempt to break the entity's hold on the property. A Catholic priest conducts the rite, while Ed Warren coordinates the structure of each session, and Lorraine maintains her role as psychic observer, documenting the entity's responses to each phase of the clergy-led prayers. The priest describes these sessions afterward as among the most demanding he has conducted in his ordained ministry. The entity resists with sustained force that tests everyone present. Hours pass in confrontation that feels less like religious ceremony and more like combat conducted in spiritual dimensions the physical senses can barely perceive. September 6, 1988 marks the completion of the final and most intensive exorcism session. The priest pronounces the property cleared of the demonic presence that has occupied it for more than 2 years. Both Lorraine Warren and Carmen Snedeker report immediate and tangible change in the house's atmosphere. Air seems to return to rooms that have felt suffocated since 1986. The oppressive weight that has pressed down on every person under that roof lifts, like fog burning away under direct sunlight. Philip's condition stabilizes in the weeks that follow. His personality returns to recognizable patterns. The behavioral disturbances cease. The Southington case enters the public record through multiple channels in the years following the exorcism. Ed and Lorraine Warren collaborate with writer Ray Garton on the 1992 book In a Dark Place, documenting the family's experiences and the investigative process. The case attracts attention from both paranormal researchers and skeptical investigators, generating debate about the consistency of accounts and the role suggestion might have played in shaping the family's perceptions. Critics raise questions. Believers find confirmation. Ed Warren maintains until his passing that the Southington house represented genuine demonic infestation resolved through proper ecclesiastical authority. The 2009 film The Haunting in Connecticut brings the case to broader audiences, dramatizing the Snedeker family's ordeal for theatrical presentation. The movie takes creative liberties that separate it from documentary accuracy, but it succeeds in transmitting the essential facts. A family moved into a former funeral home, encountered malevolent presence, and required serious spiritual intervention to reclaim their safety and peace. Lorraine Warren continued referencing the Southington case throughout her public speaking career, identifying it as one of the most spiritually demanding investigations she participated in during decades of work alongside her husband. The intensity of the demonic presence, the sustained nature of the phenomena, and the comprehensive exorcism process required to clear the property all marked the case as exceptional even within the Warren archives. The property at 208 Meriden Avenue remains standing in Southington, Connecticut, returned to purely residential use after the Snedeker family eventually relocated. The house sits on an ordinary street among other ordinary structures. Neighbors pass it without particular notice. Nothing in its external appearance suggests the events that transpired within its walls between 1986 and 1988. Whatever record exists of those years resides in the documented accounts, the published investigations, and whatever memory wood and plaster might retain of the family who fought for their home against forces that operate beyond comfortable materialist explanation. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.